It's a brand new week, everybody. Well, it was a brand new week yesterday. It is Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day. And y'all asked me, so I'm going to get started with this book. I'm not done with the Elvis and June book. That's a great book. I'm not done with, our favorite nun actress that was with Elvis, which for some reason my brain it's escaping me right now. Dolores Hart. I'm not done with that book. We're not done with Child Bride, but I did want to get started with the Don't Ask Forever, my love affair with Elvis. Partially because I'm a little curious. I really like comparing the different books. We know this was written in 1997, same year as Child Bride came out. Let me make sure I'm right about that. No, 1994. Child Bride came out in 97. Lucy DeBarba's book came out in 1987. Kathy Westmoreland's book came out in 1987 as well. So we know that nothing could have been taken from the Lucy DeBarba book for Kathy, and nothing from the Kathy's book for Lucy's. Okay, so to me, those stand alone as the very first look into Elvis. Then you have books like this. So let's start. Prologue. I stood there amidst all, well, actually first, thank you to members, subscribers, those that gave super thanks. Karen sent a super thanks, so did Ruby. Appreciate it. Members, subscribers, all that good stuff. People that comment, I love your comments. If you see a heart and a like, that means I've read it. Okay, prologue. Let's get started now. I stood there amidst all the mementos, assembled in the authorized Elvis Presley Traveling Museum, staring at one particular photograph. That's Bobby Gentry there with the king. The museum's founder, Jimmy Velvet, looked from me to the photograph and then back to me again. Leastways, they told me that was her, he said, shaking his head. For him, it was a wild moment of mild confusion. For me, it meant being swept back in time by a flood of emotions I had kept dammed up for nearly 14 years. Jimmy Velvet interrupted my reminiscence with him and Elvis's stepbrother, David Stanley, with an invitation to join him and his wife and kids for a bite to eat, which turned out to be several hours of exchanging stories. Listening to Jimmy, who with his museum had dedicated his life to preserving the memory of Elvis, he talked about the star's tragic end and the scattering of the entourage I had come to know those many years ago. It struck me that, with all due respect for his efforts, Elvis's spirit transcended all tangible attempts to keep it alive. While I myself had preserved a few material objects from my years with Elvis, what really remained of our love were my special heartfelt memories that until this day I had shared with only one person closest to me, which was my sister Janice. Let me explain. I've been a staff member of the Armed Services Committee of the United States House of Representatives for 25 years now. At the time I was involved with Elvis, I was quite young and quite a junior member of the staff. Consequently, I was very discreet about my relationship. Only close friends on and off the hill knew, and no one but Janice knew the whole bittersweet truth. Janice, my big sister by 20 minutes, my identical twin. The bond between twins is very likely to be special, but the one between identical twins has no parallel. Janice is my mirror image, my other self, and I am hers. No wonder she was the only one privy to my relationship with Elvis, himself a twin. Later, as we were about to part, Jimmy Velvet pulled me aside. "You're the one," he said, taking my hand, "the one who should really write a book about Elvis." That night, I dug out the diaries I had kept during those years with Elvis. Immersing myself one more in that magic time, I felt a weight lift from my heart. It came to me then, and for the first time, that sharing my Elvis with the world would act as a catharsis, as the revelation of any whole, unvarnished truth must be. The next week, a card came from the museum. Now I know why Elvis loved you, it said. It was signed Jimmy Velvet. I was deeply moved. Jimmy Velvet's card made me aware of the hundreds of millions of people whose lives have been touched by the music and warmth and excitement of Elvis Presley. I can only hope that my memories of him, finally shared with you, will do the same. So this book is told to William Conrad Knowles. Before we get started with chapter 1, I'm just curious about the author. William Conrad Knowles is a novelist and screenwriter, as well as the author of articles on American politics and culture for the Baltimore Evening Sun. Okay, he lives in New York. Joyce Bova has been employed by the House of Representatives for nearly 30 years, serving chiefly as a staff member of the Armed Services Committee. In addition, Joyce is an award-winning ballroom dancer, and she lives in Maryland. So I love the fact that Joyce has been in the Armed Services Committee for 30 years as of this book. That would have been 64 to 94, something like that. Don't know what she's doing now. I haven't really looked it up, but we will learn about her for sure as we're going on this journey. It's going to be pictures in here, of course, pictures you can see on the back. Probably seen these photos before. Chapter 1. It was the summer of 1969, a summer in which women wore bouffant hairdos and miniskirts, a long, hot summer of riots and burning draft cards of the My Lai massacre and Neil Armstrong's Walk on the Moon, the summer of the Manson family murders, and the first summer of Richard Nixon's Law and Order administration. It was the summer Mary Jo Kopechne drowned on the Chappaquiddick Island on the summer of Woodstock. It was the summer Elvis, Aaron Presley, and I fell in love. So 1969 was the summer that she fell in love with Elvis, and Elvis fell in love with her, according to the book. So 69. Right after the comeback special. The months prior to the summer of 1969 were grueling ones for all of us at the House Armed Services Committee. The My Lai disclosures were tearing the country apart, and my subcommittee on investigations was naturally at the eye of the storm. By the time my vacation rolled around, I was exhausted from working at fever pitch for months. I racked my brain for the perfect place to seek relief from an endless mountain of paperwork on chains of command, ultimate responsibility, and military cover-ups. An overload of reality if there ever was one. So, where better to escape than the Mecca of unreality, Las Vegas? Can you hear the drums going? Elvis getting ready to come out there. I say, see, rider. Oh, see what you have done. Ronnie Tut. Anne Marie Wade. A friend from the Hill decided to come along with me. Her strawberry blonde hair made me look darker and more Mediterranean in contrast as we stepped off the TWA's flight from Washington that fateful evening, the 16th of August, 1969. 16th of August. 8 years before Elvis died. She stepped off the plane in Las Vegas. Actually, it was on our third night in Vegas that fate really began to take a hand. We were staying at the Dunes, and the hotel had arranged ringside seats for us to Paul Anka's show, when Mr. Anka suddenly dropped on one knee in the middle of "Put Your Head on My Shoulder." Put your head on my shoulder. I think that's how that song went. Anne Marie and I were eye to eye with the performer. How about sharing with the rest of us what you just whispered to your girlfriend, he said to me, thrusting a microphone into my face. Well, I was already too embarrassed to utter a word, but just then, the blazing spotlight swung around to hit me full in the face with its blinding glare, and I felt my cheeks flush bright red. Paul Anka leaned closer. If you won't tell the audience, how about telling only me? He covered the mic with his hand. All right, I whispered in his ear. I would have told him practically anything to get off the hook and get that spotlight out of my eyes. We met Anthony Newley backstage after a show last night, and I just told Anne-Marie that I wished it had been you instead. That's all. He drew back and gave me a look that I should have known was coming, had I had time enough to think how my words had sounded. Still, in all fairness, he let me off the hook by standing up and smoothly announcing, "Oh, sure, I'll sing 'God Didn't Make Little Green Apples for You.'" Very decent of him. But it didn't stop me from feeling like a 24-karat fool on an exhibition. I was up and out of my seat before the curtain fully shut, Anne-Marie trailing in my wake. The two of us were barely astride from the exit when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Well, I turned to find a short man in a blazer, out of breath, but doing his best to smile at us. My name is Ron Stewart, and I work for Paul Anka. Before we knew it, Anne-Marie and I were accompanying him backstage. Well, here she is. Paul Anka smiled and rose to greet us as Ron Stewart escorted us into the singer's dressing room. The young lady who knew the song, the next song I wanted to sing, was Little Green Apples. That was awfully nice of you, I conceded. It's all right. I put you on the spot out there, and you were a good sport about it. Well, I really would like to explain what I meant to say all about Newley. Let me take a wild guess. After you saw his show, one of his people appeared and asked you backstage. Right, I nodded. But he barely listened to our compliments about his performance before he started telling us that young women shouldn't be alone in Las Vegas and asking us to go sailing with him today. And you sensed it could turn into one of those sails a girl might have to swim back from? I smiled. Well, his tone seemed definitely to imply that he had more than just a friendly cruise on Lake Mead in mind. Well, I know I'm shocked, said Paul Anka, but just out of curiosity, how exactly did you answer him? We just told him, said Anne-Marie, that we had other plans. With that out of the way, we made some small talk. We told him our names and where we were from and about our work on the Hill. He was an easy man to talk to, with a tendency to tease, so that when we declined a second drink, he smiled mischievously. I wonder how exactly you'll answer me. I don't have a boat on Lake Mead, but I would like to take you to dinner tomorrow night. Oh, really now, I began. Both of you. He gestured to include Anne-Marie. Sorry, but it's impossible, I answered. We're going to go see Elvis Presley tomorrow night. Well, now that is impossible. Unless you have VIP reservations. Well, we've done all right so far, I said defensively. We'll probably get in. The difference is I can guarantee it, said Paul Anka. Professional courtesy, you know. Somebody called out that it was time for him to get ready for his next show, and when he turned back to us, he said, your names will be at the showroom entrance, the VIP reservation line. Afterwards, wait for me in the lounge. Remember now, I'll expect you there. So it was Paul Anka that was responsible for Joyce Bova, I'm guessing here, meeting Elvis. One thing that's in common with women like Joyce Bova and, let's just say, Lucy the Barbon, famous people flock to them. We had the whole John Wayne, Lucy DeBarvin thing. Of course, Elvis. Um, and then we have Joyce, Bova, Paul Anka, whoever that other guy was. Some of y'all probably know the guy that was mentioned. Was it Newcomb or something like that? What was his name? Oh, Newley, I guess. Guy named something Newley. Anyways, excuse me. I'm gonna read a little bit more. This can't be a super long reading, although I kind of would like to. I'd like to get you started off, and maybe I will, but we will see. Okay, so all the way to the new International Hotel the next night, the 19th of August, Anne Marie and I could feel the excitement. It seemed to pulsate in the thin desert air. Even now, if I stop and think back, I can feel it, a palpable physical force seeming to emanate from the 10-foot-high neon signs that everywhere blazed out of the words that said, Elvis now. Naturally, the hotel that was hosting him could not be outdone in a town that prides itself on big and blatant, so the International's marquee was a trillion-kilowatt monument. 5 letters that lit up the heavens. E-L-V-I-S. Elvis. We passed through the heavy glass doors, entered the lobby, and were greeted by images of Elvis everywhere. Posters and larger-than-life pictures decorated every wall and encircled the pillars that supported the ceiling. We walked on towards the showroom and saw that every conceivable space was devoted to huckstering the king. There were Elvis toys and puppet Elvises, Elvis mugs and drinking glasses that said Elvis, pennants, t-shirts, balloons and novelty clocks, utensils and stuffed animals. Every kind of gimmick and geek-aw one could imagine had been fashioned in his image like religious icons. Even more daunting testimony to Elvis's presence was the length of the line outside the showroom. I pointed out to Anne Marie that we would have a heck of a time circumnavigating it, even to find out if Paul Anka's name was as potent as he claimed it was. Besides, we had a feeling that if we tried to walk to the front of the line, we'd run the risk of being lynched by the mob ahead of us. Too bad, Anne Marie was adamant. Ever since I can remember, Elvis has been the object of my fantasies. Tonight, I don't care about anything but getting in to see Elvis. Well, at that moment, a man who'd been walking up and down the line approaches us. Good evening, ladies, he said. My name is Chick, and I'm with the International. May I ask how long you plan to be in town? Well, probably not long enough to get us to the front of that line, I observed. It really is a ridiculous situation, he said, smiling, but I might be able to solve that problem for you. Great, we chorused. Now, how would you both like to meet Elvis? Here we go again, I said, throwing my hands in the air. Did he say what I thought he said? Let me guess, Anne Marie answered. After the show for a drink in his dressing room. Well, no. Chick raised his eyebrows. Now, before he does his second show. Well, Joyce, what do you mean, well? Anne Marie was glaring. I told you, this is Elvis Presley, who I've been crazy about since I was a kid. What are we hesitating for? Probably because I'm suspicious of real life when it keeps threatening to turn into fantasy. I wanted to say that, but I didn't. I just followed Anne Marie, who was following Chick, through the first door that he opened and down a long, brightly lit corridor that led into a maze of hallways. I don't think we should expect too much this time, I remarked, trying to keep things in perspective. There'll probably be a long line of fans ahead of us, and we'll probably get lucky just to get a smile and a handshake. Well, that's okay with me, Anne Marie said. I'm just wondering how we'll ever be able to find our way back without a guide. It was seeing the armed guards that finally brought what was happening home to me. I had to ask myself, did guys pop up like this all the time to inquire politely if you'd like to TT with a star? Or tete-a-tete? Tete-a-tete? I don't know how you say that. Tete-a-tete? I'd show it to you, but it'd come backwards, and it'd be like, ete. Um, where was the catch? There had to be one. Well, Chick was knocking on a closed door. Well, it was opened by a rather ordinary-looking middle-aged man. Ladies, Chick said. Ushering us inside and closing the door behind us. This is Vernon Presley. Well, I could see immediately that Elvis's daddy hadn't his famous son's flair. The way he slouched off to the side, seeming to fade into the woodwork, made him seem physically smaller than he actually was. He had thick, full gray hair and wore an open collared shirt with dark, wrinkled slacks and a sport coat. It was clearly not his DNA that carried whatever genes that Elvis had that gave him his flamboyance. I heard him ask Anne-Marie something about the dress she was wearing as Chick led me across the room to a heavy-set, Italian-looking man. Joyce, this is Elvis's right arm, Joe. Joe, meet Joyce. I thought she and her friend would like to meet Elvis. Joe Esposito, the man said, putting out his hand. Nice to meet you, Joyce. Bova. Did you say Esposito? I thought all Elvis's men were from the South, I kidded, knowing from his flat Midwestern accent that he wasn't. They are, Joyce. I just happen to be a good old boy from South Chicago. How about you? Well, I'm a Westerner myself, Joe. West Baltimore, that is. And Italian, too. How did you ever guess? Said Joyce. He laughed. Come on. I'll introduce you to some genuine good old boys. Well, the West boys, Red and Sunny, were definitely the genuine article, cut in the stereotypical mode that the public had come to associate with the Presley Memphis Mafia. Cousins rather than brothers, each was in his 30s and of a size and demeanor that left no doubt as to either their intention or their ability to fulfill their roles as Elvis Presley's sworn to the end protectors. Sonny even mentioned in the course of the conversation that Red had started kind of looking out for Elvis while they were attending high school in Memphis. Both West boys were extremely polite in the Southern tradition. Yes, mamming and no mamming from word one. But I couldn't help but notice that their eyes never ceased flicking around the room, that they never relaxed their hard, watchful stares above the warm country smiles. Now, Charlie Hodge, on the other hand, was a complete doll, said Joyce. He may have hailed from Alabama, but his droll, dry, mischievous manner was pure leprechaun. Oh, no, he protested a minute or so after we were introduced. I don't go as far back with Elvis as Red does. Fact is, I first met Elvis in the Army. A couple of thousand GIs and Elvis Presley. We were both PFCs back then, private first class. Except that in the minds of an awful lot of population of the country, the young female half especially, Elvis ranked somewhere just slightly higher than the commander-in-chief, which couldn't have made things easy for him. But, he handled it well. Plus, he must have took a liking to my guitar picking, else I wouldn't be here tonight talking to a pretty lady like you. Notice you're carrying around an empty glass. Well, let me get you a refill. As he walked away, Anne-Marie waved me over to where she was still talking with Vernon. An enormous, gruff-talking man barged ahead of me to mutter something to Elvis's dad. Vernon introduced me and introduced him as Lamar Fike. An enormous, gruff-talking man. And I observed that like Red, Sonny, and Joe, and even Vernon himself, that this Lamar also cast periodic glances at a closed door on the other side of the room. You didn't have to be Sherlock Holmes to deduce that it was Elvis Presley that they were expecting on the other side of the room through that door. It was a familiar sight to me. See, Washington crawls with people whose careers depend on anticipating the next move, the next mood, and the next whim of the powerful men that they serve. Before long, I caught myself shooting glances at that door. And since I didn't have the excuse of being an employee, I had to face the fact that this must be the residue of adolescent hero worship. To paraphrase, you can take the woman out of her teens, but you can't completely take the teen out of the woman. I was an Elvis generational kid, and standing in that room, I could feel the carpet of my hard-earned Washington sophistication being yanked right out from under me by the idea of seeing him in the flesh. I can't claim surprise as a factor in the shock tremor that soared up my Richter scale when that door finally did open. The suspense, right? It was Elvis Presley. I was prepared to see him come through it, and it was Elvis Presley who did step through it and into the room so close to me, I could have reached out and touched him. But what I wasn't prepared for was how beautiful he was. Beautiful. Now, that was the word that leapt to mind. Not just physically attractive or handsome, which he was, but something more, something instinctual. He inspired in me not so much desire, but a mixture of curiosity and awe. Like what you feel when you see your first tropical sunset, or when you come unexpectedly on snowflakes falling silently in a moonlit forest of pines. Let me read that again. That's actually very poetic. He inspired in me not so much desire, but a mixture of curiosity and awe. Like what you feel when you see your first tropical sunset, or when you come unexpectedly on snowflakes that are falling silently in a moonlit forest of pines. It's very well written. Whether that was Joyce or William Conrad Knowles, very well written. I'm going to read some of chapter 2 here for you, okay? Because I know all of y'all are curious. What was said? What was it like? Well, obviously, Elvis walked in, and she's just in awe. But what did he say? So here's the next chapter. For those of you that have the hardback, and you should buy this. I don't think it's still in print, but you can probably find it on eBay or something. I'm on page 11. I don't remember any longer who actually introduced us. But I do remember, and I can still feel how I felt as if it were yesterday. The touch of his hand as he reached out and he took mine. It's a great pleasure to meet you. Actually, she said, it's a great pleasure to meet you. I told him. Not exactly my first words to Elvis Presley, but I did have the excuse that I was mesmerized by those intense, incredibly sexy eyes that even off stage seemed to sparkle and glow beneath his long, thick lashes. Not easy to take your eyes off of this man, I warned myself. Not that he seemed me to want to take his eyes. Man, I'm having trouble here. Not that he seemed to want me to. Still holding my gaze with his, he acknowledged that it was a pleasure to meet me too. So he pretty much said the same thing. It's a pleasure to meet you. In a voice so sweet and so sincere that my knees got all wobbly, and I gratefully accepted the chair that he led me to. I watched him drop gracefully into one that he pulled alongside. He crossed one bell-bottom trouser leg over the other. You know, Joyce Bova, you're a beautiful girl. I was nowhere near regaining my composure when he went on. You're not from around here, are you from Vegas? His question broke the tiny little flash fantasy I'd slipped into. All my teenage girlfriends suddenly materializing en masse to gasp at their pubescent playmate being called beautiful by Elvis Presley. No, I'm not, I returned to reality, or what was passing for it at the moment. I'm from Washington, D.C. At least that's where I work. He nodded. You're not in show business then. He turned away, interrupted by a small mob of fans and well-wishers swooping down to gush their fulsome praise all over him, but turned back almost immediately. Pretty thing like you. You mean to tell me you're stuck away in some government office? Well, I guess, if you think of working for Congress as stuck away. Congress, huh? How about that? Anything I might have heard of? Well, the House Armed Services Committee. Actually, I work for the Investigations Subcommittee. Yeah, well, it sounds like they could be pretty fascinating work. I started to say that I was new and still getting the hang of it when Joe Esposito called, "Time to get ready, boss." Yeah, man, okay, Elvis answered. I began the goodbye I assumed would end the time I met Elvis Presley. Instead, he reached for my hand. That work that you do, it sure does sound interesting. Was I crazy? Or did he not want to let me go? I'd really like to hear more. He smiled again, this time looking intently in my eyes. Would you like to see the show again? Actually, we haven't, but we've been looking forward to. Looking forward? Didn't you just come from it? No, I knew instinctively that there was no point in mentioning Paul Anka. Anne-Marie and I had made arrangements to see the second show, I explained. He let go of my hand, stood up, and pointed to Joe Esposito. Joe, put them in my booth. Then he turned and faced me. Will you come back after the show? An act of Congress couldn't keep me away, I dared to say, and was rewarded with a notorious lip-curled grin. Joe will get you right afterwards and bring you back, honey. With that honey ringing in my ears. Joyce said that she followed Elvis's right arm, gathering Anne-Marie along the way. And it's funny, there's no mention of Anne-Marie here. Anne-Marie was the supposed super Elvis fan, and he's not sharing nothing. I guess Anne-Marie must have got scooted off in the corner over this way, while Elvis and Joyce were over here. Before I read any more, what do y'all think of Joyce? Well, I mean, have y'all read the book? Who has read the book? Who hasn't read the book? We've heard some of the stories, obviously, that come from the book, but I have to say that my curiosity is piqued as I'm reading this. Okay. With that honey ringing in my ears, I followed Elvis's right arm, gathering Anne-Marie along the way. On the hike back to the showroom, I filled her in on what had taken place with Elvis, and she was still shaking her head in wonder as we were escorted past the waiting throng and deposited in a red velvet booth directly at center stage. Before he left us, Joe Esposito told the waiter, who had materialized almost immediately, that the rule about not serving people during the performance was to be relaxed in our case. The instant we were done, we were alone in the booth. Anne-Marie leaned close. Joyce, what do you think's going on here? Should we pinch ourselves or what? I had to laugh. I'm not really sure, I admitted. Well, said Anne-Marie good-naturedly, I hope he realizes that you're not just another pretty face. I'm looking to see if there's pictures in this book. There's some. Not just another pretty face. Let's see if there's anything I can share. Let's see. So we have this. That's her and her twin. That must be me in the early 70s on vacation with Janice. Amy Joy's Donut Shop. That's the donut shop Elvis stopped at when he went to D.C. That's Joyce on a hotel bed, looks like there. Joyce and Elvis there. All right, we're going to read a little bit more. I guess I will probably make it to that 40-minute mark. It's already like 34 minutes. I really only intended on reading 10 minutes, just to get started. Okay, so they're in the booth. Well, said Anne-Marie good-naturedly, I hope he realizes you're not just another pretty face. Who knows if he really even thinks that. Anyways, all I want to think about right now is enjoying myself. That's what we're here for. Well, I turned my attention to the enormous packed house, and I was just about to make some thoroughly innocuous comment on the broad age range of the audience when Elvis, without any announcement or introduction, strode back onto the stage. And this is what happened. The sight of him on stage brought it all back. My rock and roll years dancing to Don't Be Cruel at the Catonville Teen Center, hearing once more the rustle of my crinoline. I have no idea what that means. The rustle of my crinoline must be clothing. Feeling the raspiness of my cardigan against my hot, damp neck, floating across the dance floor, enraptured by the pure, raw energy raging from deep inside Elvis's heart and soul. Oh, you know I can be found. Yeah, but what a great song. Oh, don't be cruel. He'd shimmered with such mesmerizing sexuality that by comparison his rivals seemed as dim as the objects in the room as you first enter the gazing summer sun. Now, just as effortlessly as he had dominated my teen years, Elvis dominated the vast, intimidating international showroom. There was a great collective gasp, followed immediately by silence. Then came the screams of delight and anticipation, the women in the audience going slightly out of their minds, leaping to their feet with wild, shrill, erotic cries. Their eyes were wide and shining, and they emitted little animal yelps that seemed to come from deep in their throats. There were women of all ages carrying on like this, not just teenagers, but full-bodied mature women, even grain matrons, all of them going berserk, screaming, crying, jerking spasmically, like shakers or holy rollers. They seemed possessed by the same kind of religious fervor in their devotion. I wouldn't have thought it possible, but the screams actually rose in pitch and volume when Elvis launched into, "Well, that's all right, Mama. That's all right for you. That's all right, Mama." You can hear right. "Just anything you do, that's all right." Anyway, she's sitting there, guitar. Probably guitar in 69, right? The lyrics were lost in the rising crescendo of adulation. But that didn't really matter to his people. Hearing the words to the songs they knew by heart did not mean as much as paying homage to the singer in the only way available to him. Elvis responded to us with a mix of appreciation and amusement, and I say us, because even though I wasn't as outwardly demonstrative as the others, in my mind and heart I had melded and fused into that shrieking, ecstatic mass of humanity and become a fan again. Elvis had the power to make you a fan again at any age, and that was obvious. I had no problem in falling under his magic spell, and half becoming that starry-eyed teenager, racing once again to the record store for his latest release. I may have worked on Capitol Hill for Congress of the United States, but that night I was a skinny, breathless adolescent all over again. Even with a full orchestra blaring and thousands of people jumping up and down and screaming their lungs out, I felt that everyone in that vast room must have been able to hear my own heart pounding above it all. By that point, Elvis was truly into it, his boundless energy manifesting itself in somersaults and one karate move after another. Elvis was doing somersaults across the stage. Y'all let me know whether you ever heard about Elvis doing somersaults. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised. He was very athletic in 69. Great shape. So each one brought down the house. The applause was incessant now as he moved closer to us, the once notorious pelvis gyrating wildly. Until in the midst of one of the grinds, he halted abruptly, looking not only surprised but chagrined. Oh, I laughed out loud before I could catch myself. He split his pants. Do you think he meant to? Anne-Marie whispered. If it was staged, I answered, I can say that it was very effective. Meanwhile, Elvis had casually backed off stage and quickly changed his pants without missing his note. He returned to launch into, "Love me tender, love me true." You know how I walk around? "Never let me go." Just walking around, doing the kissing thing. "Love me tender, love me true." What a great song. Really, it's a great song because Elvis sang it. Anybody else sang it would have been very boring. "For my darling, I love you." I got no voice right now. Whatever. My voice is still tired from reading, I guess, the 45 minutes yesterday and then the other 10-minute videos as well. It takes a toll on your throat talking nonstop. Like, doing a 40-minute book reading is like doing a 2-hour show singing, at least. At one point during the song, he came to the edge of the stage and knelt down before a group of women fans, and again, they were all ages, frantically clustered at the edge of the stage in desperate anticipation. They shrieked and pawed and kissed, while Elvis kept that crooked little smile of amusement through it all. As the crowd around me climbed to new heights of hysteria, I had to fight to keep from feeling smug and superior, knowing that the subject of this frenzied outpouring of love and adoration had chosen me, Joyce said, to be with him after the show. It was a major head trip, which led me to another insight. It was a trip that could get pretty complicated, because here was a man who was the object of 1,000,000 female fantasies. A man who had spent his adult life having women throw themselves on their intimate apparel, or both, at his feet. It occurred to me not unreasonably that he just might be expecting more than I was prepared to deliver. It was at this moment that Anne-Marie chose to lean over and shout, "I'm not going back with you to see Elvis." "What?" "Why not?" said Joyce. "Paul Anka, remember? We promised to meet him in the lounge." "Well, I'm going to." See, Anne-Marie, she knew she didn't have a chance in Hades with Elvis. I mean, she probably got almost complete. Well, he probably said, "Good to meet you, baby," and then pulled off Joyce. So she wasn't going to have any time with Elvis. It was going to be all about Joyce. And maybe she's trying to be a friend and not necessarily get in the way. "Couldn't you?" I'd raised my voice even louder above the screaming, whistling, and foot stamping that signaled Elvis was bringing his performance to its climax. "Please come back with me, even for a few minutes." Beneath her head of light curls, Anne-Marie's small, pretty features twisted into a thoughtful frown. "All right," she nodded, "but just for a few minutes." It took only a few seconds for his eyes to search the room and find me. And this is what Elvis said. It'll be said at the beginning of the next video. I guess that's as good a place as any, right, to stop. Y'all know I'm one for cliffhangers, right? I hope you enjoyed it. You know, I've had it on my shelf for a while, and I haven't read it. I'm keeping an open mind and an open heart on this, right? I've got my own little preconceived, thoughts and ideas just based upon all the years that have gone by and the stories that were told. And but I'm curious. I'm curious about her, and I'm curious what y'all think about the book so far. And yeah. Well, TCB, TLC, I got to get off to work. So even though I'd like to read an hour and a half more, first off, my voice wouldn't hold up. I got to kind of keep it going every single day, or there'll be big old breaks and gaps of not reading. And so I don't want that to happen. I'll do my best to stay healthy for y'all. All right, TCB, TLC, this is Joe Sends Rare Everest Photos. I appreciate every one of you so much. Thank you for the super thanks, the likes, the comments, the subscribers, the members, for those that are buying the merchandise below. And I'll have other merchandise that's going to be better looking as well coming up soon. All right, see you now.